Welcome back. Back to sneaky himbo time, Graz, including the playoffs. Who has sacked Patrick Mahomes the most time in his career?
He said including playoffs, and that's what got me. Because my first thought was Maxx Crosby, but I know we're talking Maxx Crosby, so that's a little bit obvious, and also obviously not playoffs. Von Miller hasn't played in that division in a long time. I like a team that Kansas City's seen in the playoffs a couple times, maybe struggled with a little bit, that's beaten them in the regular season a bunch. That's the Bengals. I'm guessing Trey Hendrickson is the answer to this question. Trey Hendrickson.
You're right. Trey Hendrickson. He's right. 6.5. Maxx Crosby, second at 6. Oh, himbo. And he was right there. Von Miller's even on the board there, too. So, Rob,
what is this score, hembo? What are we looking at here?
14-4.
Get it together.
Yeah. I know.
He's distracted by baseball season starting. I think that's what's going on.
It's a big concern for himbo. That's why we're going to play the game.
Yeah.
Time for one big concern. Dan-O, give us one big concern you have, by the way, for the Chiefs.
Number one, who's going to be the pass rusher opposite George Karlaftis? This was the issue for their football team last year on third downs, getting after the quarterback. And also say, really, the second thing is, like, who's that really dynamic and big play second pass catching option? Trav coming back is a big deal. He's going to be impactful. But that second receiver that's really going to take to the next level and become opposite not only Trav but Rashee Rice, who's that person going to be?
Okay, Garage, give us one big concern you have for the Broncos.
BC, I have concerns in my life. The state of the Denver Broncos is not among them. They're good. Like look, could they add a linebacker? Could they add a pass rusher to help replace John Franklin Myers? Could they use a playmaking tight end? These are not big concerns. The Broncos should be a very good team if Bo Nix can run it back and do what he did last year. I think they have built a deep roster that could withstand free agent losses and doesn't need a lot of quick fixes.
By the way, they said Bo Nix, that ankle should be great here in the offseason. All right, Mike T, give us one big concern for the Raiders.
Well, this is assuming that they're going to draft Fernando Mendoza with the first pick overall. They need a stud number one outside wide receiver who's big and physical. Brock Bowers should be great. Ashton Genty should be better. Ironically, could they get Omar Cooper lucky if he falls there at 36, top of the second round? But for Mendoza to be great, tight end, running back, they need a great wide receiver on the outside.
Okay, let's stay here with the Raiders. Groz, what are you hearing? What's the latest there with Maxx Crosby staying in with the Raiders or a potential trade?
Well, I don't think they're going to be able to trade him anytime soon. The medical concerns that came up with the Ravens, there were multiple team doctors that looked at that imaging and were concerned. So right now, if you're trading Maxx Crosby, you're probably taking very, very little compared to what the Ravens were going to give you. So I think the key now would be if you still want to trade him, which I'm not 100% sure the Raiders even do. If you still want to trade him, the key is to get him healthy, let him show healthy. And I think this is something that picks up again at the trade deadline in October. Again, if at all, Maxx Crosby wanted out. That's one of the reasons they did the trade in the first place. If that's no longer true, then he may well be a Raider for the foreseeable future.
Mike T, I'm curious, how would you have handled this situation?
I would try and trade him as soon as possible. He is a great pass rusher by any metrics. He's 29 years old. We know about the knee issue. And Brian, to me, what I worry about is with Mendoza being a rookie and a rookie head coach, it's going to be 2 to 3 years for this team to get meaningfully competitive, especially in a division where you have 3 great teams. So why not, in terms of the rebuild, get as much as you can? Maybe it's 2 second-round picks. Not ideal, but that's probably better than what you would get in 3 years from now when, let's say, you can maybe get a second-round pick because there's going to be even more concerns about his knee. So if we're going to take it down to the studs, let's take it down to the studs. Let's have a master rebuild, and let's include Maxx Crosby in that.
They've made some moves, Dan, or are they better off keeping Crosby?
You always want great players. Mm-hmm. Maxx is a great player. How does Maxx remaining a Raider truly help the Raiders when it comes to like this rebuild under all this new group coach in Mendoza? Because if Maxx plays, and Mike T and Graz, correct me if I'm wrong, most of the medical concerns about Maxx Crosby weren't for the now or the 27.
Right.
It was for the, hey, 2 or 3 years from now. How does him playing in September and probably dominating, how is that going to remove some of those fears for those teams? You know what I'm saying? So it's like everyone continues to say, get him healthy, prove that he's healthy enough to play, and then maybe the trade value goes up. How would that change the long-term medical prognosis of a player that people believe may not be healthy enough in 3 or 4 years?
Trade value can only go up from where it is right now. I don't think it ever gets back to 2 first-round picks, given what we now know about the knee and those concerns that you mentioned that are long-term. I think it's going to be very difficult for them to get that kind of return from Maxx Crosby now, certainly now, but even in the future. So, again, it comes down to what's the situation. We get to October, are they losing a lot? Does he express another desire to go somewhere else? And then do they facilitate that? But obviously the landscape has changed in terms of what you're going to be able to get in a Maxx Crosby trade if you ultimately want to do it.
All right. How about another player who could get moved? Our next stop, Philadelphia. Good. The star receiver, A.J. Brown. He remains the center of trade speculation coming off his least productive season with the team. One field with some off-field drama. Yesterday, Eagles head coach Nick Sirianni was asked if anything has changed regarding Brown's standing in the organization.
Nothing's changed there. AJ's an Eagle. Nothing's changed from the last time I spoke to you guys.
Okay, you listened to that, and I know you said you were kind of skeptical on Philly moving on from A.J. Brown.
Well, one, it certainly sounds like the ball is in the Eagles' court. It certainly, you just read the room, A.J. Brown doesn't sound like a guy who wants to be there. So it's up to Philly. If Philly decides, all right, we got to move A.J., do they view themselves as a legit contender then? Because you don't, great organizations, and Philly is, and Howie Roseman's as good as a GM as there is in football, great organizations don't just willingly move off from great players just because. And so if they're willing to move AJ because they have deemed he just doesn't want to be here, it's either they don't view themselves as a legit contender, or they just have this unknown plan to acquire certain people or picks to replace that production. Because teams that truly believe they can win the Super Bowl, they don't move from great talent, they acquire great talent.
Mike T, and I can feel you pushing back on this. Tell me why.
Well, it just seems like, there's been a lot of smoke around this situation for a while. So, again, Graz mentioned this yesterday. There's a salary cap ramification in terms of if they trade after June 1st. It really helps them out to take those cap charges over 2 years. And if you're Philadelphia and you could draft, a receiver like a Denzel Boston or Omar Cooper at the bottom of the first, a little bit like what Dan O said earlier in the show about taking Carnell Tate if you're the Cowboys, very similar logic applies here for the Eagles. So to me, if I'm the Eagles and I know that I really traded a player, again, too soon and too late, and the team that, keeps coming back in this conversation is the Patriots. A.J. Brown had a ton of success with Mike Vrabel in Tennessee. New England needs a frontline receiver. They're in a win-now mode with a rookie, quarterback on a rookie contract. So to me, that could make sense as well. So I think this story has a long way to go before we really know how it ends.
Graz, so I'm looking at that graphic. Is June 1st, is that the date I'm circling then when we talk about A.J. Brown, whether or not he's going to get moved?
I think that's when it becomes realistic. You see here the difference in the cap hit. Obviously, that's significant. So, look, if things pick up in the next 3 weeks ahead of the draft, maybe. But the key thing to watch here is the return. The reason he wasn't moved is because the Eagles couldn't get the price they feel he's worth. You look at what the Broncos traded for Jalen Waddle. You look to some extent at what the Bills traded for DJ Moore. There's a market that's been set. A.J. Brown, probably a better player than those two guys. So I don't think the Eagles feel like they have to make this move. And as a result, they're standing firm on what they're asking in return. If they don't get that before the draft, then yes, I think this is something that picks up again over the summer. And as we head into training camp, and the Eagles will definitely continue to ask for a high price.
You said good teams don't move good players. Is there a world where the Eagles make the move and still stay elite, so to speak?
I mean, there's a world, yes. You'd have to figure out what the comeback is. Like if you move A.J. Brown, is it strictly for a 27 draft pick, or is there a receiver that gets added this year? I think that's an unknown, but yeah, they're a very good organization, very good team.
All right, we'll see what happens there, especially after that June 1st date. All right, once we're done, coming up on First Take, will SGA continue to get the calls when the playoffs